Okay, I was just recording a video, and the microphone volume was all the way down. I don't know what Windows problem is, but so yeah, that's off topic. Sorry. In any case, I'm going to be talking about how the Germanic languages are related to each other. I'm going to start off talking about how Proto-Indo-European became Proto-Germanic. The main sound changes that you have to worry about for Proto-Indo-European and Proto-Germanic are Grimm's Law / Werner's Law. What order they happen exactly? Maybe Grimm's Law first, then Werner's Law. Maybe Werner's Law, then Grimm's Law. Maybe they happen at the same time. It's not entirely clear, and I don't think there's any solid evidence that can show what order they happened. But in any case, the result of that is the sounds which are reconstructed as being ba, da, ga, and gua become ba, da, ga, gua, and the sounds which are reconstructed as ba, da, ga, gua become ba, ta, ka, gua. The sounds which are reconstructed as ba, ta, ka, gua, and sa depend on whether or not the following vowel is stressed or not, is I think how Werner's Law works. And that can lead to them becoming voiced if it is. And I think if it's not, then they just become fa, tha, ha, hua, and sa. But then we have some sounds which don't really change at all. So we have ma, na becoming ma, na, and I have a change here where na has the allophones na and wa. But whether those existed already in Proto-Indo-European, I'm not going to say that they didn't. I don't know. And whether they existed in Proto-Germanic exactly, it's very hard to reconstruct these things, but Wikipedia at least claims they did, which is what I'm getting all of my information on from, if I'm being honest. But I did, do all this work collecting all of this into one place where I'm talking about all of the a lot of the Germanic languages. Ra, la, ya, and wa also don't change at all. We do have one sound, gua, which merges with either wa or ga in I think all of the Germanic languages. So if it's next to you, it becomes ga, and if it's not, it just becomes wa. So let's say we have this word, let's say chneguan, and in the past tense it's chneguon. So then the gua would become wa, so you would get chniwan, but then in the past tense you would get chnihun, where that labelization just goes away. Okay, here are the vowels. The vowels are a bit more complicated, and also I could have included H3 as another source of O, but yeah, it doesn't actually affect anything, I don't think. You can just say, oh, H2 or H3 does the same thing, I'm pretty sure, in the context of Germanic. So we have short I stays I. You have A becomes E. You have becomes A. I don't know exactly how it was pronounced in PIE, but oh. Then we have something which is called E2. E2 is a kind of a rare sound, and it merges with other sounds. Mainly, it merges with this. Well, I think it's actually a E1 that merges with A. So I don't know if E2 merges with anything. Then we have O and U, which stay the same. Then we have these nasal vowels. E, o, o. I don't have nasal vowels in any language that I speak, so hopefully I pronounce those okay. And those arise, unsurprisingly, from a following nasal consonant. So, for example, the accusative of wolf in Proto-Indo-European would be Wulkwam. Then in Proto-Germanic it would be Wulfang. This isn't actually. I mean, it's not like Proto-Germanic was written down or anything. So we're just reconstructing that off of Proto-Indo-European, as far as I'm aware. Um, it's possible that it wasn't nasalized, and if so, I don't think we would know. But based on Proto-Indo-European, it probably was. Um, at least that's how it's reconstructed. Then we have regular A not followed by ya, and that becomes eh. And when Proto-Germanic has these things called overlong vowels, which are pretty rare. But here I just have it with a one of those like carrots or whatever over it, like a circumflex, I think it's called. So we have and I'm not good at long vowels, and I'm certainly not good at overlong vowels. Well, maybe I am, since I tend to pronounce long vowels as overlong, but oh well. Then we have something by which A and O merge. I should have put an A here. I should have because it was believed to have been an actual letter. I mean, an actual like sound in Proto-Indo-European that was just very rare. But oh well, I didn't include it. But H2E becomes in like as in most European languages. And then A and O merge. So short A and long O is what you get. Now, there is another source of A, which is when you have like I think two A's together, they become long. You can't really do that to the other way around. You can't like put two O's together to get a short O. So O is always long in Proto-Germanic. So we also have that overlong. So we have long O and overlong O. O and O. I guess I should say O and O because I think it's like more. If you speak German, it's like the O and Gott, but long and then overlong for the other one. Then we have nasal versions of that, so you get like the uh, I don't know how well I'm doing there. Then we have the diphthongs. Okay, so Proto-Germanic has 4 diphthongs, I think, unless I made a mistake here, but I'm pretty sure it only has 4. It has ew, ew, ow, and I. And those come from, I mean, I would just say, oh yeah, where you'd expect, but the notation is a bit confusing here. So L becomes L, ow, O become ow, I and I become I. So that's what I mean. It's what you would expect because they sound basically the same. The one exception to that is you have something where my vowel chart doesn't exactly show this, but one of the sound changes that did happen is I think it's called I umlaut, where where e and ew become I and ew when the succeeding syllable has an I in it. And whether that happened already in Proto-Germanic, I don't know. It could have been like a Northwest Germanic thing, because Gothic doesn't tell us anything, because it just has E always becoming I. The E always becomes I. But I can get to Gothic now. So, Gothic, if you look at this, you can see I made a mistake in that I left out the S and Z on the Proto-Germanic consonant side. But other than that, in terms of actual changes, there's very few. First of all, H becomes H, Hua becomes Hua, and the other change, and there's only two by the looks of things, but that's not exactly the case, because there's another sound change called devoicing, but I didn't include it here, where ya and wa become something that's written DDJ and GGW. How those were pronounced isn't entirely clear. There's not really much evidence to go on based on to determine how they were pronounced. I pronounced them as a palatal plosive and a labiovelar plosive. So ya and wa. I should say, because I haven't said it yet, that ngwa is actually only appears before gua, and I mean that's just where it appears. So whether it was labelized there, I'm only saying it is because, well, first of all, that's what Wikipedia says, but also I think it makes sense. I mean this if it's going to assimilate to the following consonant, it makes sense that it would become labialized too, because that's, if it's followed by a velar, it becomes velar. If it's followed by a labial velar, it becomes a labial velar. And that applies to qua too, so you can also get ngwa and then the letter for qua. So that's the other place it appears. Okay, Gothic vowels. The main change, first of all, is that becomes a, so becomes a, and also these overlong vowels. No Germanic language keeps them. Not that I'm aware of, anyway. I think they're just reconstructed as they're kind of required for certain things. But I'm not knowledgeable enough to say which ones. As for the nasal vowels, they assimilate to the oral vowels, so they just become oral vowels. So ing becomes e, and becomes u, and then becomes ah. So that's u and ah both have two sources, as well as e also has two sources. This E2 and E1, they merge to become A, the A, and the those both become O. Usually, I should say that you have in certain cases, like a vowel will be at the end of a word and slang, and then it becomes a short vowel. That's something that can happen. And, well, I mean, it's a regular change for the most part. Then we have the diphthongs, I and ow. They just become and o. Then there's another change where you get a short and a short o, which is from ra, ha, and hua. When they succeed an e or a u, then they become or o. Let's see. because A just merges with I, you get U for all of the with all of the ew. They just become ew. Okay, now I'm going to talk about Northwest Germanic. Um, Not much to actually talk about here. We do have a s and a z, but the z becomes r, 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 r. If you speak Czech, I think that's the Czech sound, that one that only Czech has, pretty much. Well, I'm sure there's other languages that have it, but Czech is the one I'm aware of. R, 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 r. I also got rid of ngwa. Not for really any. I mean, it could have still been there. I don't know. I also put h for the sound of hua at like the. I mean the h at the beginnings of words. Um, that seems to be a common sound change in the Germanic languages, but mainly this the most important thing is this r, 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 with this Czech sound. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's something like that. Okay, then for the vowels, I should say that I didn't get this part from Wikipedia. I don't want to say pulled it out of my ass, but it's, I may have. Um, all of the Northwest Germanic languages develop umlaut at some point, so they all have umlaut. Um, and it seems that they may have all developed umlaut separately. Even a Visigothic dialect seems to have developed it. So that what that could say is that maybe these people were in contact with each other a lot. So maybe like some old English person goes over to Old Saxony, and they talk with the Old Saxons, and maybe they get the umlaut that way. Um, maybe there were like the merchants all spreading it around, or maybe it was just already there, and it was just an allophonic variation. And now I should say this is just me, you know, uh, not really basing this on anything, and I'm not sure it's really correct. In fact, it's probably I wouldn't even be say I'm like more than 50% sure, but oh well. The important thing is that it does happen in all of the Northwest Germanic languages, and even seemingly in Visigothic. So it might even be as old as Proto-Germanic. I don't know. Um, and if it wasn't Proto-Germanic, then Gothic just lost it, the dialect that we have, or if it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it couldn't have been kept in Gothic because we have the letter the letter I don't know what it's called. I think winya, which is used for the Greek sound u. And you wouldn't really expect that if that was already sound in Gothic. But in any case, it doesn't appear in Gothic, except in maybe one Visigothic dialect. Um, but I just have it here because it does appear in all of the Northwest Germanic languages. This is a common Northwest Germanic feature. So even if this isn't exactly correct, it is like correct in the sense that if you're trying to understand the Northwest Germanic languages, it may as well have been already there in Proto Northwest Germanic. Um, Other than that, the main thing that you might find interesting is that eh, merges, well, it merges with ah. I think it's actually supposed to be back in the mouth, so ah, ah, ah. This is like a sound that appears in British English. but not in American English, so I might be pronouncing it wrong. Let's see if I can notice anything else other than the umlaut. I do have some more nasal vowels created by umlaut here. And let's see. The nasal vowels are lost in pretty much every language. They're kept in North Germanic and Old Saxon, but they're kind of not really written down. And then I think they're just lost. Um, but we have like this grammarian, first grammarian, I think, that says there's nasal vowels, and in Old Saxon, the Wikipedia article claims that nasal vowels were kept in Old Saxon. I'm not sure if I believe this, but I guess I can talk about that more later. Let's see. So other than that, you might see this that is not the same as E1. I should say I kind of made the orthography a bit confusing. I apologize for that, but it's the new one is the old one is and do they I guess maybe it could become like you could have E1 and then it gets umlauted to so maybe that is like some of them might overlap, but then you get like the nasal vowels of that. I'll try to say these all. E, I, E, E, U, 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 E, E, U, 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 U. I'm I'm really bad at the nasal vowels. I apologize. A, E, A, E, O, U, O, O, U, O, E, O, E, O, U, O, E. Gosh, that's I apologize. I can't. There's no way I pronounce those correctly. Um, then we have the ew, ew, ow, I. I'm glad those sounds don't exist in Gothic because then I would have to learn how to pronounce them correctly. And then we have the Old Norse consonants, and now there's basically no change here. Let's see if I can find any changes. I have Gwa. Does Gwa appear in Old Norse? I don't know. I'm pretty sure also becomes Va, and not just. I think that's something that happens. Like an over, which I didn't mark down, but I will. Let's see. Is there anything else? I mean, at least according to what I wrote, nothing changes. At least in terms of how these sounds, like the overall inventory. One thing to note is that by the time the switch is made to Latin alphabet, they're no longer distinguished, at least not in writing. They were distinguished in the runic alphabet. There's a separate rune for the re, and whether that's due to just conservatism and just using the orthography that your parents taught you, I don't know. But they did distinguish it in writing in the runic alphabet, not in the Latin alphabet. And it was, I think, lost in Old Norse at some point. And I think I heard that it was actually voiceless at the ends of words. I'm not sure. So, Ulfaz becomes Ofer, over, something like that. Worthong becomes Orth. And that's because wa is lost at the beginning of words. I should have put an example for J. I didn't. but y is also lost at the beginnings of words. There's also examples, and I didn't write this down, but I should have, where y is gained, but that's not because it was in Proto-Germanic. That's simply because of the vowels adding it where it wasn't before. And because I didn't write it down, I'm not sure exactly, but I think that's how it works. Another thing to consider is that a huge difference in the consonants that doesn't remove any consonants from the language, doesn't add any, but it doesn't remove them as, like, Old Norse still has an N, but a lot of the N's are in fact lost. So Proto-Germanic Thunkiano becomes Thunkya, Thunkya, which later just becomes Thukya, Thukya, something like that. And what I mean by that when I'm saying that is that these nasal vowels are all lost. I'll get to that. So we have these Northwest Germanic vowels, and then you get even more vowels. Old Norse has the second umlaut, which is the back umlaut. So the back umlaut gives you even more vowels. That's a lot of vowels. I don't know if any language has this many vowels. It's quite a few. Am I going to say them all? Yes, I'll try. I'll try to say them all. I, e, u, 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 e, 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 um, 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 wait a second. I think that I'm confusing myself with my orthography, which is based too much on the Proto-Germanic orthography. I think that might be or is it Oh crap! This is why I should have just used the IPA. But oh well. Let's see. Okay. Let's check something real quick. And this is totally planned. Eh, eh. So this is basically the thing I copied off of the thing I plagiarized. And you can see this is a lot of vowels. I have to be honest. This is the vowels get way reduced. But in any case, it's where's the presenter thing? Okay, good. This eh, eh, o, or I guess o, and then let's see, and then or wait, uh, uh, and I should say I came up with this orthography based on the Proto-Germanic orthography. Why I did that, I don't know. And I could just use the IPA phonetic symbols, but oh well. If you were going to speak early Old Norse and you wanted an orthography, you're free to use this one. Let's see. Where was I? I don't know. But one thing that's important to note is that umlaut of "o" gets you "u," and I'm sort of inconsistent. And later, I'll use the a spelling that's more phonetic, but here I used the actual Old Norse spelling, which is um, um, this EY. But it's actually this like O with a line through it, I think, in for the first part. And the this is the same thing except all of the nasal vowels they're just lost. So already half the vowels, half the vowels. So some people will think that's a huge improvement. To get rid of all of these vowels. I certainly, I'm glad I'm not going to have to pronounce all the nasal vowels anymore. Well, maybe, I mean, I will later in the video, but I will. Then, let's see, are there any other changes? Yes, there are. If you want to know exactly what those changes are, they're here. They're all on the Wikipedia page. But in any case, you end up with, where is it? I don't know. You end up with this, is what you end up with. I could have been more exact with how this stuff happens, but I'll. Then we have Old English. And Old English, you have this thing called palatalization, which also happens in some other languages, but for the oldest Germanic languages, Old English has palatalization, and the other ones don't, I'm pretty sure. So we have this, and I wrote it with a K with a thing above it, so perhaps in older Old English it was kya, and then later that becomes cha in most dialects, before going back to ka in some Northumbrian. The fact that it goes back to ka kind of implies that it either palatalization didn't happen in that dialect, or if it did, it was to something like that could be reversed more easily. Let's see. Then we have, well, qua is interesting because it's written CW, or I guess C win, because it has this like special character for wa. I'm keeping it as qua here, but you could say that by Old English it may have become a sequence of ka and then wa. Okay, so then the way that Old English gets these fricatives, these voice fricatives distribution is, I mean, a little. So first of all, the va, which is an allophone of ba, stops being an allophone of ba and starts. It becomes an allophone of fa. So every time you have fa intervocalically or between two voiced sounds, it becomes va, and va, every time it's at the end of the word, it becomes fa. The always becomes da, so father comes fader, and then you get a new the, which is only from intervocalic the or between two voiced sounds. So what I mean by that is voice consonants do not prevent voicing. Another thing, another palatalization is for ga, which can become a ya, or it becomes ja, or perhaps earlier before it became ja, it could have been ya, and then later becomes ja. There's also a palatal ha, this ya, which is even in modern English, I'm pretty sure, like a human being. Wait, is human? Yeah. You have that ya there. Or when I say the word heroic, you have that ya. And if you speak German, you'd know that ich is different from ach. And so that distinction probably existed some very similar to how it does in German, where the exact pronunciation is a little bit different. Then we have another example of labialization where I'm not sure if it existed in Old English, but it's written as if it didn't exist, where you just have a h and then a w, this h and then when. Z had already been lost because it became something like that. And then becomes in all cases. But a new z is created from the voicing of sa, which happens in the same environments. Then we have sh. And where does sh come from? I wrote it with an s with an acute sign over it. I could have just used the IPA, but oh well. That comes from ska when it's palatalized, or maybe even when it's not palatalized. I'm not entirely sure. So you would have one fish, but perhaps you would have two fiskas. I'm not sure. Certainly, we say fishes in English, but that might just be, taking the word fish and then adding is to the end of it. Something that I did that's confusing is I wrote this. I have the re and then the ra in the Northwest Germanic, but those both merge, and then a new ra is created as an allophone of ra when it's after a vowel, and that's I don't know if I can say it, but ra ra ra, something like that. It's this back of the mouth ra ra ra. Maybe more similar to German or French, although in the places it appears, it would just affect the pronunciation. It would just be like, in English you have like Beak, but in old English you would have like Beor or something. Then la also has this back la la, sort of like modern English, whether it's as strong as like Russian, I don't know, but like uh, fail, all. If you speak, Russian, you might, be familiar with this soft L versus hard L. So the soft L in Russian would be like ya or something. Old English doesn't have that. Modern English doesn't have that either. But the hard L, I'm pretty sure, is la, la, which modern English has as an allophone of la, and it would have been an allophone of la in Old English too. And then we have wa, which is there. I moved the ya up to be next to the ya because they merge. So young is written with a G, even though it's already a ya in Proto-Germanic. Then for the Old English vowels, here you can see I'm a bit inconsistent in that the way it's spelled is IE and EA. But I marked that down there. We have this U, which becomes E. Is there? I don't know. I think I might have made a mistake here. Oh well. I'm pretty sure U might only be long, but it doesn't matter. Because it just merges with E anyway. So Rodion in Gothic corresponds to Redon in Old English. I suppose it does matter, but oh well. Just ignore that, I guess. Or maybe it's right. I'm not sure. But the U and the A do become their own sounds which are written separately, unlike the some of the other Old Germanic languages. So the thing about is it's the normal outcome of So always becomes, well, not always. It usually becomes except when certain conditions are met, which I'm not going to get into. But you do get the split between and then for Old Saxon, I really hope I didn't get this mixed up, but I think b, d, g, with their alpha, merge with their allophones, in Old Saxon, I think is what happens. And then what you have is the is intervocalc the, and the is intervocalc the. I'm pretty sure that's right. Once again, is that's how it's written. I think that's also how it's written, with an H and then a W, a K and then a W, is what I meant to say. Well, not a W, I don't think. I think it's like a C and then a U or something, or it might even be a Q. I think so. But like an H and then a U or something. Z, I think, is also an allophone of S, due to voicing. And let's see, H also has that H, and then Re just becomes Ra, like in all of the other languages. And then the vowels, supposedly it kept the nasal vowels. I might have forgotten to finish this, I'm not sure. But in any case, the important thing to know is that Old Saxon had the same sound change as Gothic is believed to have had, where this and where this I and ow become and o. And so, once again, I'm going to turn to Wikipedia because it will have a chart with the IPA, which is what I should have done. But here you can see Old Saxon, and you can see O and E, and these are actually I and ow in Proto-Germanic. Then you have E and O, which are the long versions of and all, but they have a different place of articulation. What is this? What is that? I'm going to guess that this is some sort of umlaut, but I'm not sure. Old High German. Okay, finally we get to the everyone's favorite, the Old High German consonant shift, where we get f, t, k, and f, s, k from p to k. It's then we get like the from the, and the if you look at Wiktionary, you'll see this the written with a D, and that's because it becomes duh later. But I think in some older texts it's written with a th sometimes. Oh crap! I wrote oh, I remember why I wrote it, because that's the normal outcome of "sa," and it's not "sh." It's like Spanish. I can I do a Spanish S? I don't know. Sha, sha, something like that. Sha versus the normal sa, which is written with a Z. So the bottom S, this like sha, is written with an S, but the sa and sa are both written with Z. and I think S is written with a Z with a tail, if I remember correctly. And then for the vowels, so there's a split where I and ow can either become A, O, or E, O, and that depends on the following consonant. I'm not going to talk about like which consonants here because I didn't memorize that, but Wikipedia will say that's. I wrote U there. I'm not sure. Maybe Old High German may have had umlaut already, especially if it wasn't Proto-Words Germanic. Um, but whether that actually was the case, we don't know. We don't know exactly when umlaut happened, but it is common to all of the old Germanic languages except Gothic. So let's see. Other than that, you also get ie. EU is already in Proto-Germanic, and I think Old High German keeps it. But you get ie, which is from a, and I think there's another one. There's uo from o. But other than that, it stays the same. I should say that there is a language which actually keeps those as diphthongs in all positions, and that would be Lombardic or Langobardic. And the Lombards, they ruled over Italy for a bit. Okay, now I'm going to look at a few nouns and then a verb. The first noun I'm looking at is the one for wolf, which in Proto-Germanic was wolfas. So wolfas corresponds to the Gothic wolf, so you can see the voicing there and the loss of final vowel. And over, you can see over, something like that. You can see the loss of wa at the beginning and the z becoming ra. Then it just becomes wolf, wolf, wolf. The West Germanic languages are all very similar. The Old Norse is all very similar. Even these are all very similar to each other, which isn't surprising because they're all closely related, and you can see how closely related they are. But they are somewhat different, I have to say. Overall, Gothic tends to preserve the distinctions the best that existed in Proto-Germanic. But all of them are, pretty. Like the nominative accusative distinction, you can tell that was lost in almost all of them. But in Gothic and Old Norse, it was kept. Meanwhile, if you look at the genitive and dative, those all look the same in Old English, Old Saxon, Old High German. I'll just move on to the next one. Oh, I should say, I left out the vocative and the ablative, and Gothic sort of has a vocative case, but not really. It's mostly the same as the accusative in the singular and the nominative in the plural, except for the eustems, in which it's the same as the dative for some reason. And then we have, let's see, revu, which becomes riva, and here you have a J, which is interesting, where these E's, they put J's before them, which is sort of similar to how in English all of our U's have this Y sound. Like the name of the letter U is not U, but U. If you look at Old English, you can see this U, which is, you get a lot of like, a lot of vowels in Old English become like ew or whatever. Like ow, or L or whatever, even if the Proto-Germanic wasn't a diphthong. Old Saxon Geva and Old High German Geva. Or maybe Geva, I don't know. But you might notice that we have this ono, ena for the West Germanic languages. Where that came from, I don't know. It does look very, somewhat similar to so maybe they got a vowel after it or something. I don't know. Another thing you should be able to notice when looking at the Old Norse is that the vowel changes, and that's, I think, an example of back umlaut, where the O and like causes the E to become an O in some of them, and an A in others. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't studied Old Norse really. That now let's look at a verb. We have the verb kweithano, which means to say, and you might notice that Old High German keeps the distinction very well. Gothic and Old Norse both have one merger. Gothic merges quithidi with quithid, both very similar. Not surprising they get merged in Gothic. And Old Norse has kveðir, and that can represent quithize or quithide. So how that happened exactly? If I had to guess, they just wanted to distinguish it from kveðid, which would have become the same as the third person singular. So they just wanted to get rid of this distinction. They wanted to make a distinction between this and this, so they started using the second person and the third person. Maybe. I haven't studied it. Then, how this happened, I have no idea, but Old English and Old Saxon seem to do this thing where they decide that actually they want in the plural, and Old English and Old Saxon are very close here. You also get this ist ending, which is shared between Old English and Old High German. But where this ending comes from, I don't know. Maybe. Oh, I think I know where it comes from, actually, looking at this. I think it's Quethundi, and this N, Old English loses N a lot. So, for example, you have German Zahn, which means tooth, and you might notice in the word tooth, there's no N in it, because the N just lengthens the preceding vowel. In Gothic, it's tunthus. Let's see. So I think that's what happened, that the N lengthened the preceding vowel, and then they just had like something like quithad, and quithad. So that makes sense. So they're just using the third person plural in all cases for first, second, and third person. So maybe Old Saxon did that too then. Then we have the past tense said, and you might notice that in Proto-Germanic it seems to have already merged in the first and third person singular. So unsurprisingly, it's merged in all the descendant languages, which I wrote there. So I could have just gotten rid of one of those rows, but I didn't, just to show that they're the same. Likewise, I kept quadon and quadon. So it looks like they're using the third person plural there too, for all of them. And using the third person plural is something that you can see in modern German for like wir sagen, ihr sagt, not ihr sagt, it is like you all say, but if you want to say, be polite, formal, then it's sie sagen, which can be plural. And then Z sagen, which is, in addition to being you singular, you plural, it's also third person, but it's just not capitalized. It's also third person feminine, but not sagen. Sagen isn't, but Z is she. So sie sagt, she says. That's not important for this, but it is important in this to the extent that you can see that created would be like related to ihr sagt. Okay, what else do I want to say? Old High German, once again, preserving even the AS, which doesn't even look like it was there in Proto-Germanic. So why they have it, I don't know. I think Latin also has it. They might have taken it from here. Why it's long though, I don't know. Gothic and Old Norse are very similar. You can see that this nasal vowel was lost, so kvadu becomes quadu. I think that's it, though. I think that's everything I wanted to say. There's not any more slides after this, so that's it for this.